What, can you not be the
Yeah,
moderator?
I am.
Okay.
I just
All
added
right, I've got my
myself.
wife as the moderator. So sorry about that. Okay. So if you sing scale steps, you're kind of getting this idea, you're building this kind of musical ladder in you, and you can use it for all of your ear training. You can use it for your when you hear songs, when you hear classical pieces. I use this kind of thing when I'm auditioning pieces to arrange for classical guitar in different keys. So if you get really good at just going like one and finding like where your root note is, and then sing like a major scale, but give it numbers: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you can sing 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 6, 1, 7, 1, 1, 7, 1, 6, 1, 5, 1, 4, 1, 3, 1, 2, 1, 1. You're doing a good job, bro. So you can do that, and you become a really you trains your ear. So if you hear something, you hear a song or a guitar solo, you just know exactly what's going on, and you can do something like, you can, if you hear, dun dun da 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 da, you hear it different. You go 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5, and you kind of like, you develop your ear. Okay. So you can combine the Yates exercise with the one by Tolman Topstock if you move your fingers without touching the strings, but keeping them very close. Yeah, so this whole thing about the Yates exercise that I was showing you all, I mean, it's not to just do something. It's not to do something just that's painful or annoying or slow. When you're doing things like that, the most difficult thing on the guitar is to arrive on the right note of the right string, right? So the guitar is basically a harp, right? Your guitar is no matter where you put your fingers on the guitar, it's kind of like you're creating a new open string, so to speak, a shorter string, right? So we have to keep on putting our fingers in the right place in order to create the results that we need. So when you practice this kind of arrival on the strings in a very accurate way, you're training your brain, really, is what you're doing, to be more consistent, right? And to be very, very calm and arrive slowly and surely, right? So it's a wee bit like, it's the hardest thing that you need to get good at. So if, imagine, it's, you could equate it to like Roger Federer working on his actual stroke, right? So you could have all kinds of ideas about tennis, and like, I'm going to get my footwork here, I'm going to do these fancy things, but if your like fundamental stroke is not good, you have to kind of get that in order first, if you know what I mean, right? It's the same thing with your right hand stroke. So if you get this going, like if just a simple pluck isn't easy for you and doesn't sound good, it's not going to happen in a more complicated situation, right? So like during the game of tennis, your actual stroke has to be perfect, right? So when you call upon it to do the thing, it just works. So whenever you work on something very, very slowly like this, it can actually also override your finger memory, and that's the important thing, is that your finger memory is getting better, right? And your kind of muscle memory can be improved and you can kind of override previous bad habits. So if your hand's like all over the place and you're kind of swinging in to get notes, it's very inefficient. And you do a wee exercise like this, you're teaching your brain, you're giving it good information, and you're saying, this is what I want, this is what I want you to act, right? So anyway, that's the basic idea, is to just work on the basic thing. Um, okay, let me see. Do re mi from The Sound of Music too. Yeah, do re mi does work, especially in a relative sense, like solfege. Although I prefer using numbers in music because music is based off numbers. Music is kind of mathematical, and even though a scale step of five, isn't the same thing as a perfect fifth. It's not the same thing as an interval, but you can arrive at that interval quite easily by singing one into five, like Star Wars. Dun, dun. That's a perfect fifth, and it's also the fifth scale interval. And you can use your scales to kind of get good with intervals, so you can kind of like, if you practice your major scale, you're going to get good at hearing a major third. 1, 2, 3, and it's easy if you sing Three Blind Mice too. It's easy because it starts on three. Three blind mice. I ask these American kids sometimes about Three Blind Mice, and I've never heard of Three Blind Mice. It's a bit weird for me. But you have to, you think they'd know that nursery rhyme. It's a bit dark. But so you can practice your major intervals with a major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 6, 5, 1, 7, 1. And then you can use a minor scale to practice what that minor sixth sounds like, or a minor third. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you're really learning where the half steps are, basically, and you're training yourself to feel those 1, 6, 5, like a minor sixth. All right. Thanks. Blah blah blah. Does anyone know where the way blah? Yeah, that would be useful if I could have that. Playing through headphones will improve your technique. It can, yeah, I guess so. A bit like maybe singing with your finger in your ear or something. There you go. Yeah, turn on slow mode, babe. So, yeah, you can. Let me see here. So, is there any other questions you have about classical guitar? I've been solfeging the modes of the major scale. It works. Yeah, I mean, and modes themselves, I mean, that's a whole different thing to wrap your head around. I mean, if you get really good at singing a major scale and a minor scale, I'll probably do a video on this. You want to learn the modes when in relation to how close it is to a major scale or a minor scale. So there's basically two modes that are major. I mean, the major scale is a mode. It's just the most successful one because of where the tritone is placed. But if you learn the other ones, you'll learn the flavor of them. We don't want to learn the modes in the context of a major kind of background, unless you're doing it for some jazz thing. I don't understand how that works really. But if you're really wanting the sound of a Mixolydian mode or a Lydian mode, you're basically thinking them. This is like a major scale with one note that's different, right? So if you think of a Lydian mode, you're just basically thinking this is a major scale with a raised fourth. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. So you can practice knowing the Lydian mode away from your guitar. You can sing it in the car. I remember being a wee boy, being about 11 or 12 or something, and reading like guitar magazine with Joe Satriani talking about the Lydian mode and just talking about it in these terms like it's just a major scale with a raised fourth, and it was when he had that Flying in a Blue Dream song or something. It was like it was this kind of thing, and I loved the sound of it, as it sounded kind of dreamy, and so getting that kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I remember just sitting reading that and singing it in my head as a wee boy and being like, oh yeah, that's that sound. And then you can think of the Mixolydian mode as just a major scale with a lowered seventh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. I think some bad advice I heard when I was younger was to practice playing fast. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even the shredder guys when I was a kid, you get those videos by Yngwie Malmsteen or Tony McAlpine or somebody, and they'd be, play, these really fast things, but they'd always be like, you have to practice very slowly, and then obviously Yngwie would be like, just that was his slow version. But you have to take that advice, because playing slow is actually the fastest way to get something. Because when you're playing slowly, you're not actually moving slowly. You're actually thinking more, and you're more engaged. Um, so if I have like something I'm trying to get, and I want to play it slowly, I'm my mind is actually working more. When I'm playing something at full speed, it's like I'm just letting it happen. I'm just letting it go. It's wound up and it's ready to go. But when I'm playing slowly, I'm being very deliberate, and I'm kind of controlling the movements and the prediction and then the setups for the next movement. So if I play some, so that is something I have to practice. I have to like practice the arrival and get something. And obviously, if you can't play it slowly, you can't play it fast. Okay, I think so. Blah, blah, blah. Not sure about how to word this question from a newbie's perspective. I'll just read the questions out so you can understand them later. Not sure how to word this question exactly from a newbie's perspective. What would you say is the spice a David Gilmore adds to the pentatonic to elevate it to beautiful solo sounds? That's a great question. Let me get my electric guitar, maybe, even though it's not plugged in. I'll just do it like this. So when you're working with like a rock context and you're playing just your usual pentatonic stuff, and David Gilmour is usually very safe in that rock context. Okay, well, brilliant. My wife's giving me my electric guitar. No amp, unfortunately, but maybe you can hear it. Can you hear that? So with a electric guitar playing and blues based playing, obviously it's all about nuance, right? So say you're practicing your kind of usually pentatonic things, and you're kind of, instead of just practicing scales, you want to practice playing with nuance, right? So what does that mean in a very crude sense? We could make it like you want to play basically more expressively, right? So you want to be more Han Solo, less C3PO, right? So what makes you sound like C3PO in your guitar solos? It means you're probably plucking everything, so if you're like, so if you just pluck everything, you're going to sound a bit tight, a bit uptight. It's going to sound amateurish. So when you hear a good lead guitarist, usually they're doing different approaches all the time, so you can approach one note to another note in many ways with the electric guitar that make it sound more vocal. So you can basically do slides, right? So you're approaching it with a slide, which is much more like a human voice. You can do slurs, and what I mean by slurs, hammer-ons, pull-offs, and you can do those in time, just to make it easier and more legato, or you can do them as inflections, like little ornaments. And that's actually the first lick that I teach a kid when they come in doing like electric stuff. I just call it falling off the log, where you go, you start on that top. So you have slides, you have hammer-ons, pull-up, and obviously you got bending. So bending is the most expressive thing you can do on the guitar, on the electric guitar. So that's where, Dave Gilmore's, that's where he's making his money, is on bending things, and getting control of it. And you have certain spots in your pentatonic world that are more expressive bending than others, right? So you have, I like to think of, if we just focus on this little box scale area, and then these top 3 strings. When I'm teaching kids, I teach these. These are like little gas station exits. You have the main freeway, right, of the scale itself, and then you have these 3 little gas stations where you can slide up to and not lose your place. You're just going over to get some gas and some gum and a drink, and then you get back on the freeway and you know where you are. So you can go up here. So you can slide over to the gas station, or you can bend there. These are great bend spots. This is the prime bending spot, the most used place. All like rock solos. And then you can also get up to this one where you bend into the home bass note or the tonic note. So these are the Dave Gilmore kind of bread and butter areas. And then you can even bend into the 4th, which I'm sliding into in that Abilene song. So that's a good place to start with bending, is those 3 spots on the top of that basic pentatonic scale that you can really start to be as expressive as possible. And you can just try and focus on always doing that. Like if you're not used to playing expressively like that, you could even put one of these wee backing tracks on YouTube and just say like, okay, for this 5 minutes that this backing track exists in this key, you can be like, well, I'm only gonna do slides. I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna slide from note to note, right? And then for the next 5 minutes, you're going to be like, I'm only going to do bends. Make sure you have plenty of negative space. Allow the notes to ring. You don't have to play all the time. That's why playing along with these wee backing tracks is great, because you can feel the groove of the song. And so then you have slurs too. Same thing. You don't want to go. You want to like that. You just want to practice these things over and over again. And then when you're at the end, you can have a go at putting them all together and give yourself a rule. Just be like, I can't pluck, 2 notes. I either have to slide, slur, or bend. Okay. Hey, Kenneth. Brilliant, Tom. Okay. So, Herman, yep, that's a good exercise too. Yeah. It's very difficult just to get in control of your fingers with these kind of exercises. That's the point, is that you want to dictate to your fingers how you want to play. If you don't do that, you're going to stay the same. You're going to stay in the same level. You're going to stay in the same place. So it's a very difficult thing to, just really dictate to your fingers, this is what I want. This is the thing, that I need. How do I hit that high harmonic on Abilene? Well, I haven't played that song for a while, and I decided to record it. So let let me see if I got my buoy slide on. I always keep my slide in my pocket. And it's like in a G kind of, it's got a capo too, but I don't have a capo on me. So it's just this kind of little false harmonic that you would use mostly in classical guitar, but other guitarists use them too, like Eric Johnson uses that kind of thing. And it's something I actually discovered as a kid on my electric guitar, and then I realized later on a classical guitarists do it all the time. So in order to get a consistent harmonic, if I do it without the slide, it might be easier. You have to make sure that where you're touching, or even if you're doing it with your left hand, you never play a harmonic in the middle of the fret, right? So you always want to aim for the right side of the fret, right? Look at that. My wife's bringing my steel string guitar. My assistant, my trusty assistant. Okay, awesome. Okay, now I'm in Abilene world. So if I'm playing that, let me just talk about that as a general principle. So if you're aiming for this octave normal harmonic, the one that you would use the most, you never aim for like the middle of the fret. You aim for the right hand side of the fret, right? Like from your perspective playing. That's because that's where the note starts, right? So if I put this finger down on the note, not a harmonic, but just put it down, it's a little bit of a false idea to think of you're playing the note with your left hand. You're not, it's not like a piano where you put, and the action begins by that finger. You're just creating a new string when you put down your left hand. And when you put down that finger, the note is starting on this fret wire. It's like a little miniature nut. It's the same thing as this is, right? So when you're doing a harmonic, it's very tempting to put your finger in the middle of the middle of the fret, like it's a bullseye. The middle is the place, but it's not. You have to actually aim for the right hand side of it, and it'll always be clear. And you're always aiming for a very specific place like that. You're not just aiming for the whole thing. So you just get good at that. Just like if you're a basketball player or something, good shooters will aim for like one of the little hooks, where the nets are. They're not just aiming for the general basket. So the more specific you aim for something, you have a greater room for missing, good misses. It'll still sound good. So I'm doing that. I have to aim in two ways because I've got a slide, right? I'm on this capo 6th fret, G minor on the 2nd fret capo. So I'm aiming for the slide being, the same goes for when you're playing slide. If you want it to be in tune, you don't aim for the middle of the fret. You aim for the right hand fret wire, right? So if you aim for the middle, it's gonna be flat, unless you want that in an expressive way. So I'm aiming for that there, and then I'm aiming for the I'm not just hitting the middle of the fret. I'm actually aiming right over the fret wire. You can actually do it if you hit it right. You can do it in a whole other octave. Okay. Ever deal with the frustration of practicing something slowly for a long period of time and feeling like you're not progressing? Absolutely, Tom. Yeah, I mean, all the time. You do have to have a certain kind of trust and hope in certain things. And when you practice slowly too, you're not just playing things for the reason to practice slowly. I mean, you do have to practice it at full speed. You're trying to gain control of it, and you're trying to get it in your good information in your brain and put in like so you're not practicing mistakes, if you know what I mean, right? So if you practice something slowly and you start to get control over it, you can actually try it going slow and then fast, or slow and then normal speed, right? So this is something that you can do that Stanley taught me, really helped me. So if you're just get my classical guitar, if you're going back and forth with that, it becomes you can do something slowly, and then the fast thing should have the ease of when you play it slowly. It should translate with that ease. And then when you play it fast, it's just like you're letting it go. So B in it, slow, fast is very important. And I rather do that than to slowly increase the metronome bit by bit. But, nobody has time for that. So you want to get the slow thing for the clarity and for the ease. And see if you can do something, for instance, like 4 times in a row perfectly slow, and then do it one time where you're just doing it fast to let go. And you immediately go back to the slow thing, right? And so you kind of feel it, and you can kind of like, even if you screwed it up when you played it fast, doesn't matter. You're going back to the slow anyway, and you're going to kind of reinforce that sense of ease and the accuracy of that. So that's a very powerful thing. And there's many more things that you can do I'll have to see what piece you're talking about. And there's a lot of problem solving you can do in classical guitar. I'm sure complicated other types of guitar as well. A lot of it's up here, and a lot of it's reducing the difficulty of it with your noggin. You have to really kind of, it's the same thing as lowering the difficulty of something by getting the right fingerings, getting the right positions, little tricks. You're going to get to that ceiling quicker than if the ceiling's way up here and you keep practicing something that's just too difficult and just wasting a lot of time, if you know what I mean, by not solving it. So a lot of times when I'm practicing classical guitar, I'm solving things and I'm making things easier so they'll come out during a concert. Could you elaborate on the questions Stanley Yates would be asking himself when playing slowly? Well, on that wee exercise, just that simple exercise, Stanley he's using that exercise as like a concert day. Get your fingers obedient again, because he doesn't like to practice. And so he's trying to gain this kind of smooth movement and getting his fingers to really like go smoothly, because a lot of times in classical guitar our left hand is kind of preempting things, and it's slowly getting to a place on the fretboard before it's needed, so it's kind of sneaking on to the right place like a tarantula, walking and feeling the air and making sure it's got the right thing. So you're not doing these jerky things with your left hand usually when classical guitar. It's more like rock climbing. You're being really like specific. Did the armrest come with a guitar? No, I bought that armrest on the Larrivee just on I forget what it was. It was some kind of bluegrassy festival or something. And I just saw it and I thought it might look cool. But I guess the more you're not leaning on the sound hole, it creates it allows the soundboard to vibrate more, Okay. I often think of Gilmore as having a different solo conception than a lot of rock players. Well, it depends. I mean, on a great solo like Comfortably Numb, he's talking about Dave Gilmore. All Dave Gilmore is thinking, this is why I want you guys to learn the notes, and we'll start to work on that and plug in triadic things on the guitar. He's outlining a harmony, on his guitar, which is a different level than most kind of pentatonic noodlers, And a lot of times you see Pink Floyd songs a lot of them are like John Lennon songs. A lot of them are diatonic. They're not blues based in the terms of having these major, minor, dominant chords, which is the language of blues. So if you think of like Comfortably Numb, he has to do something different. It's so he's doing that solo, and he's basically outlining the chords. So he's seeing this little triad, and then this is just a tension note, and then he's bending into the A chord. Say, my wife's motioning to get me. She's providing these different guitars, like what's the ceiling fan? Oh dear, that was an early nightmare. Like a magician's assistant. All this is very basic. So yeah, if you start to just think in terms, just that alone, it means you're immediately engaged in it, and it's not like he's just kind of moving around. He's really he's following the chords, which is any lead guitarist worth their salt is doing that on some level. Have you worked through the Stanley Yates technique books? Yes, I have, and I've Stanley Yates's technique books are second to none, largely because they actually have a planned progression in them. They're not for beginners. I wouldn't say. I would say they're it starts out almost in a low intermediate level, but it has a real focus. It has gradual lessons simultaneously, one for the left hand and one for the right hand, kind of in parallel. And some of my more talented students have used them. Great thing about Stanley's book is it's not just about the physical things, it's about the actual sensations and how it applies to your mind when you're playing as well. What would you suggest to practice if you only have 15 minutes a day? It would depend what your level is and what your aspirations are. If you just want to sing songs or write songs, that's one thing. All you need is a few chords and the truth. And if you want to become a lead guitar player, there's different things. If you want to be a classical guitar player, if I'm reduced in my time, and I want to, I'm kind of under the gun and I only have a few minutes to practice, I would just work on technical things, right? So I would sit down with my classical guitar and I would just go through certain little exercises. Maybe I'll show you kind of like a daily routine and make a video of that. But that's what I would do, because it's important to keep your touch level up. It's like you have to kind of keep that touch and just the dimensions of the guitar. So I always kind of give my fingers good information. Like I give them this kind of vertical information by just doing these little hops from string to string. With kids, I call it the froggy game. You get the whole family of froggies across the river. And though I do that every day, because that's the one thing that you should be able to do that's kind of risky, is just jumping to another string, And then I do horizontal things mostly on like in a classical guitar. And then I do some diagonal things, these Pat O'Brien exercises. Pat O'Brien was a famous kind of guitar whisperer who lived in New York. A lot of people would go to him when they had injuries and stuff. So my teacher at App State, Douglas James, he showed me this, when I was having a little bother with my left hand, and he was trying to help me reduce the tension in it. So this Pat O'Brien exercise was great. Maybe I'll just do a video of that. So if I was doing 15 minutes a day, I would do that, and I would run through some arpeggio things like I forgot to tune down. I loved your Bach McCartney video. Do you have any more of those downline? Yes. I mean, I'd actually like to do a wee series just about songs that I love, that have chord progressions maybe, or just this totality of the song that gets my attention and makes me feel something. and then to go in and kind of do a deep dive analysis of what causes those affectation, those kind of like, how does it affect me, why, not just describing it, but like getting to the sensation of it. So I'd probably do like a little series, maybe I call it like Secret Chords That Please the Lord, from the Leonard Cohen song. I play the A note with the F sharp at the same time, both in the 14th string. I hear both notes. Sounds better. Not sure what that means. Classical guitar. I can play some Bach and Tarrega. Yep. You have to have music that you really love that you're working on too. If you just have it, you're just going over a piece, and you want to get better. There's sometimes you're just playing for enjoyment. Like, so sometimes I'll do the work during the day, and then later on in the evening I'll practice performing. You can actually practice performing where you're trying to make good mistakes. That sounds a bit weird, but when you're practicing, you're trying to just fix everything, right? And you're problem solving. But then when you practice performing, it's a different thing, and you try and really enjoy it. And you're trying to, if something happens that's funny or you feel weird, and you have to practice not making a face and not drawing attention to it. You have to practice making good mistakes, and just enjoy playing it and being expressive. So yeah, there's a lot of different factors. Oh, sorry. I'll try and start a little earlier next time, Mike. If you had to choose, is it better to practice exercises based on more musical patterns that I'll use in the real world, or the typical linear type Steve Vai exercise? That's a great question, Chris. When I practice exercises that are technical, I actually don't want them to be musical. I want them to be almost completely physical, because a lot of times, there's if you're practicing something that's a piece of music, a lot of times your desire to play it well and to play it musically will override what you're trying to accomplish technically, right? So if I play something that has not really any musical value, like a chromatic scale, you were saying, like a Steve Vai exercise. So if I just practice just climbing up this little pattern, I can really just focus on each finger touching the right part of the fret and having good alignment. Now, if it's something that's kind of a tasty musical thing, your attention is going to be put into the expression and into the music, and you're not going to be in this kind of Zen-like state of controlling your fingers and actually getting better. So and then there's a compromise to be made too. So hey, Gary. So you can also do things that are pieces of music, but maybe play them very slowly. So it's slightly removed from that like get it done mentality. This is kind of the thing that you would, how do I put this? Yeah, you just kind of, in Alexander technique, for instance, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Alexander technique, where it was kind of a system for people getting rid of their tension, right? So a lot of times when people build tension in tasks and get injured, they usually have this thing where when they're doing their task, it's called end gaining. They're just thinking about the ends and not the process, right? So if you're thinking about, oh, just get this thing done, that's how people like end up hurting their back or slipping. But when you take away the musical aspect of it, like I'm playing a piece of music, you get more in this sense of like just the movement itself and just the technique. And you're not getting rewarded by the music. You're just getting rewarded by doing it right. Then you go and play your music, and hopefully that kind of needs its way into your general playing, right? Yeah, someone says, I'm much more likely to practice non-musical technical exercises on bass, but seldom on guitar. Yeah, so it's important that you kind of separate those two things. I think when you're working on your technique, just do it. Put on your big boy pants, your big girl pants, and do it. And you're getting better. I get very excited about things like that because I know I'm getting better, and I know I'm honing my touch and stuff. Hello, in one of your tutorial, you said you could slide into that note. It's a good note for the E minor chord because it's a harmony note. Yeah, so Charlotte's asking about sliding into a note that's a harmony note. So this is kind of on the very basic level of all types of music, whether you're playing in a band, you're a lead guitarist, or you're a composer or a jazz guitarist. Having an idea of what the harmony is, so if I just do a simple kind of prototype song that goes E minor to C like that. This is a great exercise for you to do, is to go through all, because you've learned the notes, right? And you know where the root note is in whatever triad you're doing. So you say you had a first string triad, we'll call it, that has the E on the first note, the root note. That's how you name it. So all of these notes in this triad will be good target notes. Not that you always want to play harmonic notes when you're doing a solo. Sometimes you're trying to do a tension note, but in order to know that it's a tension note, you have to know what the harmony note is, right? So if I wanted to, over this E minor, play a tension note and go, ba, ba, like Led Zeppelin, baby, baby, right? I still have to know that that's the harmony note to know what the tension note is. Does that make sense? And then you can have triadic areas everywhere on the guitar for in the same way, so I know that this is an E2, so I can do that same because I have this third string triad where the E is on the third string, and then I have a second string triad here, right? And then when you know that tension note's there, I can even add the third or even the fifth. And you have this kind of, you're actually playing along with the harmony. So that's a very basic thing to do with music in general. Okay, I'm a jazz guitar player and I've started to get into fingerstyle. Would you recommend a classical approach? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, really, when you're talking about fingerstyle and stuff, or classical, classical guitar technique just is using your fingers. You're emancipating your approach to the guitar by being able to be selective of what strings you're plucking. So if you're only using a pick, it's very limiting, right? Imagine just in an chord level, right? You have to strum through all the strings, so you have to put these big hefty chords down, and once you get into a finger style, you're able to become selective and have separate kind of harmonic lines, and you can play an E minor chord like this, which is a perfect E minor chord. It doesn't even require a left hand. So I would definitely suggest good classical technique because you're kind of like doing a lot with it, and that technique has evolved to not injure yourself, basically. Maybe a little bit different with the electric guitar. It depends what kind of volume you're playing at too, because once you get into the world of the electric guitar, the right hand's function changes. It also has to become a muter sometimes. It has to control the strings, so there's not feedback. You don't get this big woofy bass note that starts happening. So I would say it would depend on the the volume that you're playing at and the style of guitar playing. So when I play electric guitar with a pick, for instance, this right hand becomes a real muting device, and it almost becomes the opposite of my classical guitar technique. So you kind of start to touch the strings as you go. Sorry, got a visitor. We're returning the battery charger we lent them. Very good. Let me see. What's good homework you'd give to a beginner? A beginner, like a real beginner, I would learn a pentatonic scale, like a very basic pentatonic scale, 2 notes per string. And I would play along and enjoy just playing along with like a jam track that you can find on YouTube. So you just start it on the 5th fret, find a pentatonic scale, and just practice playing with it like a child. Play it like you would play with Play-Doh, and just move around the scale. And then I would try and learn a new chord every week. So if you're learning a chord, I would try and get it to where you're getting instant with it. Maybe 2 chords, say. So say you did a very basic chord progression like C to F major 7 that feels good, like the start of Like a Rolling Stone. And just practice going back and forth. I would do chords at different levels. So sometimes it's hard to instantly get a chord, right? So say if you're going from G to D and it's difficult, like playing chords, it's like a game of Twister. I would be like, okay, let me see if I can get that on level 1, which means that I strum it and then I give myself 3 beats to find the next chord. Okay, so you would go strum, find, strum, find, strum, and then you can see your progress, and then you can attempt to maybe get to level 2, by next week. So then in level 2, you're holding the chord for 2 beats, and then you've only got 2 beats to change. So you're getting faster, and you can see yourself getting faster, and you're not getting frustrated that it's not perfect, right? So you're going 1, 2, change, 1, 2, change, 1. And then obviously you get to level 3, 1, 2, 3, change, 1, 2, 3, change, 1. And you're getting faster, and you can see your progress. That's very important as a beginner. Is to be very good to yourself mentally, to don't get frustrated. Everyone knows that funny video from the angry guitarist, which is obviously hilarious, but you have to be the opposite of that. You have to speak to your good things to your fingers, good things to your mind, and be like, all right, good job, buddy, and be encouraging, be kind of have a serenity when you're practicing. Okay. So I don't know if that makes sense. So maybe like a wee chord thing, and find a song that you like. It's like a goal. Like I'd love to be able to play Landslide, Fleetwood Mac, and work towards that, like an achievable goal, or even like a simple little thing. There's also little things you can do are very easy. Sorry to stay on the beginner thing, but I usually am teaching beginners. So you can do a little finger exercise, like you can do like that, like Dazed and Confused, just to get your fingers being obedient. Pinky, 3rd, 2nd, 1st. Dazed and confused for so long is not true. Right? Another easy Led Zeppelin thing to start in the same way is to play like the Kashmir kind of riff. 1st finger, 2nd finger, 3rd finger. So you're just engaging each finger and giving it its own wee amount of attention. And that helps, just to give your fingers a wee bit of attention, because they don't do things like this unless you're like a typist or a pianist. Usually what we usually use these fingers for is just like lifting suitcases and stuff. And it's very, so we have to give them a chance. learn the bleeping notes. Exactly. So basic question, how does string size and string type matter when you're playing Wes thumb technique? Well, I'm not like a jazz like aficionado or anything. I mean, I'm sure some people on this thread would know more than me, but whenever you're doing things that are just you want to make your guitar as easy to play as possible without it buzzing. Basically, why make it hard for yourself? Unless there's some very specific tone you think you're getting at. But I think these are like nines. I think on this guitar, which is when I was a kid, that was like my Steve Vai guitar, widdly widdly thing. Very easy fretboard, huh? Yeah. Band on the run. I've not been very lucky with many of my capo purchases, Alan. They seem to either be intrusive for chord playing or just plain awkward to move about. Any recommendations? Absolutely. Well, I use these Page capos, Paige, like Paige, like a girl's name. And what I like about them is that you can turn on the pressure of them as much as you want, and it's not going to bug your neck. It's not going to mess with your neck. I don't like these big clampy things. So if you only put the pressure on the neck that you need to get the strings down, it's not going to go out of tune as much. And I like them too because they stay on the neck. I can put them, as you've seen, they're kind of resting here, like on this guitar here. It can just be there and ready to use, and I don't have to fetch it out of my pocket. It just removes the threat of like, I forgot my capo and I can't play half of the recital, So I like to kind of keep the capo on the guitar. Like if I'm traveling and the case is, it's okay, but you can't keep the capo because of the case. I'll take it off and I'll put it in the wee pocket in the guitar. So it's always there with the guitar. I just use them so much, So those Page capos are great. And I'm sure there's other ones that are good like that too. But they did make classical ones too, which have to be wider. And I even got one. They have this one for the 12 string. I have a 12 string Larrivee, and it has the extra wee rubber bits for the differentiation between the thin strings and the thick strings on the 12 string. So those are great. If that answers your question. I just got on. I like the chord change stuff right now. Yeah. You can practice with chords. So when you learn a chord, I mean, even though it's one of the most difficult things, usually I teach someone how to read tablature too, even though it might be poo-pooed by some classical people. I get them to learn how to read tablature because that can just get you playing all kinds of stuff that you like and you want to play, and the things that exist now you're so spoiled for choice as a beginner, like all I had was my ear and the guitar, which might have helped a lot. But for instance, the that like Ultimate Guitar app, I make sure all kids I would teach have that, and because you can just look up any song. If you can read tablature, Bob's your uncle, you're getting stuck into it, you're learning something you're enjoying, and it's you're on your way, because that enjoyment is what feeds your practice. It's very important to have that pleasure principle. You're having fun doing it as well. So it depends what kind of level you're at. So I don't know if I was in the middle of answering a question. Yeah, so if you learn a chord, even though chords are difficult, chords are like a game of Twister. Once you have a chord learned, I mean, you've got it for life. It's great. It's like riding a bike. If you don't play the guitar for another 5 years, you can just whip out that G chord and you can play a few John Prine songs around the campfire. You're laughing. Hi, Alan. Who would say you are some of your favorite outside players, or people that have your own unique voice on the guitar? Like, I don't know if you mean outside as in like being outside in terms of soloing style, like just kind of more like fusion or something. But I'm not really sure. I mean, to be honest, I don't listen to a lot of guitar just for guitar's sake, if you know. It's hard to put it in. I mean, I did much more when I was developing. I was like really into people like Alan Holdsworth and all, and just the mind blowing solos and stuff. But when I got into classical music, it was more kind of about the music itself, you know. So even with classical guitar playing, usually I'm not attracted to pieces that are just kind of pure virtuoso type things. It's usually like the music itself, you know. So I love a composition, you know, whether it's hard or difficult. So I love that of, you know, the fifth Villalobos prelude, for instance, just because I love all of the musical aspects of it. And it's not necessarily the most difficult thing in the world. And I love Chopin, you know, I can love some of the amazing pieces like the ballades. And I love like just most simple prelude by him. So it's like the musical idea that matters to me. And that goes into the world of pop music to where the song is the most important thing, like the melody and the harmonic action and how it makes me feel, you know, just the feeling, the emotional result of it. So even with that, yes, the Raven stuff, usually I'm just trying to find things on the guitar, even though if it looks difficult, what I'm doing, it's usually like two or three very simple little things that are just being put together, like a wee miniature band. And so my current ideal about music and art in general is that it should only have what's essential, you know. So if you look at a like an incredible Cézanne or a Picasso or something, there's nothing in it that shouldn't be there, you know. And or a great poem, for instance, you're removing things. You're removing things that don't pack the punch. So that's maybe a little bit opposite of some things. Now I like it when somebody is playing lead guitar and it becomes just very expressive, where it gets almost out of control, um, and I love that too. But I don't like the doing having a lot of notes as being central to the art itself, if you know what I mean. Um, it's not really what um, I mean in a jazz sense. Like people have seem to have their own. Yeah, absolutely, Austin. Yeah, so you're always searching for things that delight you and surprise you, and usually that involves some kind of novelty in your songwriting or your playing or your soloing. So you're always going to be trying to escape the cliche, right? Even if you're playing in a normal idiom, normal blues or jazz idiom, you're going to be trying to find your own voice and find things that are refreshing and simple or beautiful, whether they're complex or simple. Um, do you ever yearn for the band thing again, playing with other humans, or is a solo one man music satisfying for you at the present? Yeah, I mean, sometimes, I mean, playing with a band was fun. There's a kind of camaraderie to it, and you know, you're kind of like this gang, and you go around touring. It's fun, but it's also, you know, it's a lot of work too. I have a kind of a fantasy idea of some of my Yes the Raven stuff evolving into like this kind of Western um, band type thing with maybe some pedal steel and this kind of guitar. But it's a lot of work. I mean, my rehearsals are very easy when it's just me, for instance, right? Good afternoon, Helen. Can you please share some of your favorite songs and singer-songwriters? Absolutely. Greeting from Chile. Wow. Roberto, thanks for chiming in. So some of my favorite songwriters, I mean, a lot of times songwriters just come to me and they just become my favorite songwriters. So a very brief history of my favorite songwriters. Well, I started songwriting. Like if you listen to that U2 kind of interview that's on the channel, U2 and me. I mean, that's the moment that I wanted to become a songwriter. That or not wanted, it just happened, and this desire got put in me after this concert of the Elevation tour, and then the great albums like REM albums, Automatic for the People, Radiohead, the bands, OK Computer was like kind of it really affected me a lot. And then you get into the great songwriters of the turn of the millennium, you know. So the albums that affected me a lot song wise would have been when I, you know, had a band and stuff. Would have been like the Strokes, Interpol, very high batting average in terms of great songs per pound per album. So I would say that those first three Strokes albums, the first three Interpol albums are just masterpieces. You know, they're just the batting average is off the charts. And then you have the kind of more singer-songwritery stuff, you know. So obviously you have, you know, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, you have Roy Orbison, you have some of the more recent guys, Elliott Smith, Nick Drake, Townes Van Zandt, you know, stuff that just moves me, you know, Rufus Wainwright, Gillian Welch. These are some of my favorite. Nick Cave, those two Nick Cave albums, Push the Sky Away and Skeleton Tree are like incredible albums to me. Absolutely, I love those. And obviously, you know, Bob Dylan. I'm almost like omitting Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen because they're taken as read, you know. So Bob Dylan's like my all-time hero, you know. What are the stylistic inspirations for your Bach Chaconne? Okay. The Bach Chaconne arrangement was kind of done over a series of time. The stylistic inspirations are just other Bach pieces, really, probably just subconsciously. So I listened to a lot of Bach, you know, been obsessed with Bach since I was like 12. So there's just pieces that I love, you know. There's an interview with my teacher on the channel, if you check that out, Talking Bach with Jedi Master Stanley Yates, who's one of the world's, at least in the guitar world, you know, Bach experts. So yeah, so just hearing lines maybe that exist in some of his concertos, Brandenburg concertos, violin concertos, is, you know, Mass and B minor, bigger pieces. So that's why I got into Bach, is outside of the guitar itself, and then kind of, so that's probably the main influence. And so you have certain passages that maybe remind you of you know, St. John's Passion, or remind you of his, you know, other language he's used. And because he's doing one line, it's kind of a shorthand, and he's hearing all the harmonic information in his head that he's deriving that line from. I don't know if that answers your question. Do you have any suggested exercise for expressive solo play? I find I can hear themes and melodies, but like I said, with expressive solo play, you're talking about like the accompaniment and the, it's hard with not exactly what context you're talking about. Like a lead guitar, single line, or playing chords. Not sure if there's exercise. It's just if you play things with nuance, like even if you're doing a C chord, don't just play all the notes. Like split it up into like the bass. Maybe do like a, you know, kind of always seek to increase the nuance of it. Oh, are you talking about classical guitar? I'm sorry. Yeah, obviously there's a million things. A lot of times you have to allow yourself to be able to physically play it expressively, as in like you have to keep the notes legato, as in connected. That comes in with a lot of rock climbing, and which is very involved, which I'll probably do something like that in the future. When I've played with your videos, my guitar always seems a little out of tune compared to yours. Maybe my guitar's out of tune. I don't know. I did tune my classical guitar before I started this. But yeah, obviously I can't tune it on the video. So if you could do us a favor and just tune along with me, even if mine's out of tune. Yeah, Bach cantatas. Amazing thing with Bach, if you're just getting into it, and you don't have to be an expert to enjoy things. You can just step into it, just bump into it. If you look up that Netherlands Bach Society, is a great source of listening to stuff, because they're trying to record all of Bach. And that's like almost like a little ritual I would do. First thing is like listen to a Bach piece. Are there any exercises you recommend for developing finger independence? Absolutely. So I would do things like there's obviously famous ones, like if you're in the classical guitar world, and you grew up, I had that like Pumping Nylon book, that Scott Tennant book, which has great things. Finger independence. Here's a great one for finger independence. I think it's Sergio Assad from the Assad brothers. Like they're the greatest kind of guitar duo, this Brazilian duo. So when I'm doing this with kids, I call this naughty ducky, like the wee ducks in a row, and one of them is getting out of line. So if you have your fingers all in a line here, let's say in the 5th position, and you're trying to gain independence on each finger, this exercise has to do with not just the finger that's moving, but telling the fingers that aren't moving to not do anything. So you have 2 commands working at the same time in your brain. So for instance, I'm like this, and I'm got these just on the bar, like they're little ballerinas, just holding onto the bar, not doing anything. They're just a reference point. And then this finger can go back and forth on the adjacent strings, one on each side. And what you're doing in your brain, you're not just telling this finger to play those notes, but you're also telling these fingers to chill out and not do anything. Okay, so like that. And as you get better at it, you can increase the distance. See, like this. And this will increase your independence. And obviously, as you get towards the weaker fingers, it's going to be more difficult. Right? And then the 3rd finger. So these weaker fingers, the 3rd and the pinky, I have a little more serenity and grace with. And I give them a little more leeway to not be great. And then you can do it as you get, if that becomes easy for you, you can kind of go back and forth. I think this is, into opposing motions. See, like this, right? So then you're still telling the other fingers to chill out and not do anything, and therefore gaining independence. Yeah, I mean, I'm actually writing a piece for an amazing Brazilian guitarist, a friend of mine, Alex Viana. Not sure if that's who you're talking about. That's how I've learned to practice too, separating some practice from technical to memory to sight reading to experience. Yep. It's less serious, more fun. Yeah. All right, nighty night if you're going to bed. Yeah, beginning finger picking exercise technique. Derek, if you look, I've got like a wee series for beginning finger picking, just all about how to have the right position for your right hand. So have a wee look at those in the tutorials, and you should be good. Did the Assads write a technique books? Not that I'm aware of. I don't think so. But that Pumping Nylon book's a great place to start. It's very user friendly, and it's not too technical. And then Stanley Yates's technique books are amazing. Very, very. If you're serious about classical guitar, All right, so I'll probably hit the road now, and thanks for coming by for the chat, and hopefully that was a learning experience in some level. Hey, from Houston. Wow. I lived in Houston for 3 years. Know some great people there. All right. Thanks for popping by. And so, keep thinking about things that you're curious about and that you have difficulties with, and I'll try and address them at least on a superficial level here, and then we'll get deeper into it with some tutorials, etc. And so you all have a wonderful day, and if you're going to bed, sweet dreams. See you later.